From work time to fun time, Azure Cosmos DB powers the apps that power your day. Rise and shine with personalized mobile and online experiences powered by Azure Cosmos DB. You get your Starbucks coffee your way. Gas up and go. Real-time vehicle diagnostics let you know if your connected car is low on fuel. Going up. No time to take the stairs? Predictive maintenance means a smooth and safe ride to the 10th floor. Sign in, say hi. The consistent reliability of Microsoft Teams keeps the collaboration going wherever you are, using Azure Cosmos DB as the primary data store. Learn something new. Built on Azure Cosmos DB, ChatGPT's always ready to answer your questions and converse with context. See who called. Secure storage means your AT&T voicemails are ready when you are. Order up. What were the groceries you ordered last week? Walmart makes reorders easy with all transactions served by Azure Cosmos DB. Check your balance. Fidelity's secure real-time transaction processing means real-time financial management. Finally, vacation. No sitting on the tarmac for you. Azure Cosmos DB powers fuel management for JetBlue. Your modern life is built on modern apps. And modern intelligent apps are built on Azure Cosmos DB.
Hey everybody, that's a nice little video. I like to kind of know that Azure Cosmos DB is part of my day, and I hope it's part of yours, because you're probably having a cup of coffee sometime, or maybe you're planning a trip and whatever. But anyway, that's besides the point. My name is Jay Gordon. I am a senior program manager with the Azure Cosmos DB team. Welcome back to the Azure Cosmos DB Global User Group. We try to catch up once a month and typically a Tuesday to chat about all things Cosmos DB. So quick reminder, this show is all about you. So if you got something cool you want to share, drop us a line through our intake form. I'm going to put that in the chat. We're always on the lookout for new voices and ideas, so we want to hear from you. And today, well, we've got a special one. We're diving into building AI solutions with Azure Cosmos DB. It's going to be hands-on, so you're not going to just hear about it. You're going to see it in action. We'll be exploring how Cosmos DB works with Azure AI services, from AI Search to OpenAI, and how you can use these tools to up your AI game. And hey, we've got an amazing guest today. It's Jasmine Greenaway. She is from NYC, just like myself. She knows she's a great person to hear from. She's a whiz at blending AI, data, and cloud tech, and loves to share her knowledge. So stick around. This is going to be a great session. I am so glad Jasmine's here with me. Not only a wonderful technologist, but a friend of mine. So I'm really, really thankful that she's here. But I've got someone that's going to be here for just a moment and is going to help us as he always does. Hi, Askia. How are you?
I'm good. Jay, how are you doing?
You know what? I'm here in a bat cave and I'm doing just great. I know you've got some stuff to kind of share with us about today's session. And so I'm going to let you go through the housekeeping and make sure everybody knows what's going on and how they should respond to it.
All right. Sounds good. Well, yeah, like Jay said, my name is Askia. I am from the Redmond Reactor in Washington. And we basically just want to make sure before we get started, we can have you guys take a look at our code of conduct. And basically, we seek to provide a respectful environment for our presenters and the audience. So we ask that you be respectful. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary. Be professional, and please stay on topic. We're going to share useful links throughout the chat, so keep your eyes open for that. And just to let you know, this session will be recorded. It's going to be available on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel, and that should be available within 24 to 48 hours after the session is over. This brings us to our session today. It's going to run approximately for about an hour. And there will be time for questions throughout. So I will now turn it over to Jay and let him get started.
Thank you so much. I will be seeing you at the end of the show. Thank you so much, as always. So, hey, it's me again, Jay, and I am in the big screen version now. And I don't want to stay there too long because I need to bring in someone that is going to be a wonderful guest of mine. and that is Jasmine Greenaway. Hi, Jasmine. How are you?
Hey, Jay. I am doing wonderful. Not bad for a Tuesday. How are you doing?
You know what? I am also feeling that not bad for a Tuesday. We're both, if I am correct, we're both here in Brooklyn, New York, which is, I think, a first Brooklyn Cosmos DB. Maybe Lenny Lobel. Lenny Lobel lives here in Brooklyn too, and he's one of our MVPs. But I think this is the first time I've had two Microsoft people on the show who are both Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, stand up, top of the food chain, as they say. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk to you about today's subject, but I know something about you, but I want our audience to know a little bit more about you. So Jasmine, I always ask people, and it sounds silly, I always say, so how'd you get here? But what I really want to know when I ask that question is, tell me a little about your road in tech and how you wound up at Microsoft doing what you do.
Sure. So I guess starting all the way back from, when I was young, I always knew I wanted to be in STEM. Funny enough, I wanted to be I wanted to be a weather person. I wanted to be a meteorologist. But I always tinkered with computers. I had a family friend who helped me learn how to fix a printer, which was like we're just restarting the printer. And this is back in the day, like early 2000s, when printers weren't the best. And then that eventually turned into me learning how to build my own computers. And it was something I always had fun with. And then when I had internet in my home, if any of you out there remember MySpace, LiveJournal, all of that, when you could customize your websites and things like that. And that got me really excited. I got to college and I realized that I really loved that. That was a passion of mine. So I switched my major to software engineering. So fast forward to today, it's essentially my background was web development. So got my start in .NET. It was C# fan. I'm still a C# fan. And I did a lot more community work throughout the years during my career, and that led me to Microsoft. It's always a pleasure, and I always feel grateful to be here. And specifically as a data advocate, I got into this because my background in software engineering was backend. I preferred backend web development. So this was super fun, especially with the dawn of generative AI. It's really exciting to be part of this team and be able to tinker. I've learned a lot more languages in C# now. So I'm super happy to be here.
And you know what, Jasmine, one of the things that I really appreciate is that I've watched I used to be a cloud developer advocate, just like yourself, watching our cloud advocacy team continue to go out there, share these things, take on new skills themselves, and having to be able to translate that into how to share that with others. That's always really fantastic. And so you mentioned today we're going to be talking AI, generative AI, all the rage now, all the rage. I feel like here at Microsoft, if it's not AI, we're not ready to share it. We want everybody to know that there are all these AI integrated solutions that exist. And the thing that we have with Azure is lots of tools to work to build AI forward applications. That being said, there are some really great examples that we've got that I know that you're going to be showing us today. And that being said, Jasmine, I want you to show a little bit. But before you do, I just want to remind everybody, I want to remind them that Azure Cosmos DB Conf is coming. It's going to be here April 16th. Make sure you come and take part. April 16th, 2024, 9 a.m. You can find more information on that URL. It'll be streaming here on YouTube, and Jasmine will be one of our speakers. But for now, we've got a little bit to learn about what Jasmine has to share today. So that being said, Jasmine, I'm going to give you some space, and I'll be back if we got great questions, and that lets you know, audience members, ask those questions. We want to hear from you. So Jasmine, please take it away.
Thank you, Jay. So, as we mentioned before, talking about AI solutions, specifically with Azure Cosmos DB, one thing throughout this time that has really stuck with me is that your AI is only as good as your data. And so that's one thing I really want you to carry with you today. If you're thinking about building your own AI solutions, if you're thinking about outfitting something that you already have with AI, you want to make sure that your foundation is strong, and that foundation is your data. So I know a number of you out here in the user group might be familiar with Cosmos DB, or maybe some of you are quite new. So I'm just going to give you a quick run through of what it is, and then we'll get into the details into what we are talking about with AI. So Azure Cosmos DB is essentially a collection of distributed database products. And so what this essentially means, and especially this idea of horizontally scalable, is that your data is going to be likely spread across multiple servers, depending on particular requirements. Now, this is really, really important because this is going to help you make sure that you maintain things like high availability. And so in case things go wrong, your end users don't realize that, or they don't even notice that anything has happened and you're not really interrupting their workflow. So specifically the ones that we are going to cover today that you're going to see in the demos is Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL, as well as Azure Cosmos DB for Mongo vCore. So these are things you're gonna hear a lot about today, specifically around MongoDB vCore, because there's a lot of exciting things that we're going to take a look at in here. Okay, so let's move on to some of the things that we're kind of seeing people build with Azure and Cosmos DB. So things from IoT or smart products, real-time processing. Remember, I was saying just earlier that idea of high availability. So with that comes the ability to scale in process and scale in real time, where time is of the essence. Things like fraud detection, things like that, that are going to be very, very important for you to catch as soon as possible. Things like bots, as well as product discovery, and again, personalized experiences. Remember, again, that topic or that idea of distributing your data, especially closer to your users, makes it easier for them to, or at least reduce the latency that, or that the idea of the data traveling from one place to your end users. So these are only just a sliver of the things that you can essentially build on Azure, and specifically with AI. In addition to here, I also wanted to add the ability of building your own copilot. A copilot, and I think one common misconception that I just want to clear up here is that Copilot is not its own product. That it's actually a series of products. And Microsoft brought these Copilot experiences into its products and services like Bing, ChatGPT, to GitHub, M365. And so, it's AI services powering it all, and you can use them to create your own Copilot for your specific needs. So Copilot essentially is a AI application specific for built for a specific need. So, and one of the benefits of that is that not only do you get to harness massive amounts of data like you would with Cosmos DB, but it helps you generate content from that, which can be also a big deal. Okay, so you're probably wondering, okay, so what's so great about AI, about building AI solution? Why are databases like Azure Cosmos DB such so important for using or for building AI solutions? So these 3 points here really bring it home. So speed is key, like I mentioned before. And you want to be able, or especially your end users want to be able to get the answers they need in real time. They want it quick. If any of you have ever accessed or had issues with your internet connection, you know that it can be very frustrating. So imagine, trying to find the answer that you're looking for and it taking a little bit too long of a time, and it's really, affecting your productivity. Another thing here is the idea of flexible data, being able to work with different types of data, from relational to unstructured, unstructured, and be able to use it to generate a number of answers, responses, conversations. And so we know that data kind of comes in all shapes and formats, and not one type doesn't mean that that's going to be the only one where you're going to get all the answers you need. So why not use all? Another thing is the ability to essentially simplify human interactions with AI. So, you need, that ability to essentially create a rich conversation, and also minimizing the need or the cause or risk of hallucinations and keeping those answers relevant. So I also want to touch a little bit on here. AI hallucination, for those of you who are new to that concept, is where a large language model like GPT-3.5 will perceive patterns or things like objects that are not existent or imperceptible. And this can cause, inaccuracies and a lot of issues for your end user. And you've probably seen this if you've ever worked with things like ChatGPT or even Copilot, where it will say, essentially double check the output, because those things are always going to be. And so another thing here is that the idea of vector search, specifically this idea of when we're talking about context. So context and similarity search are important for the accuracy. And the way it works is that is through essentially this technique called vector search. And it offers essentially this algorithm called approximate nearest neighbor, or ANN, out of the box, and it integrates with traditional indexes, and it allows for the retrieval of semantically similar content. And it's actually pretty cool. We'll see an example of that today. But essentially what a vector search really relies on are these sets of numbers called vectors. And the thing that you're searching for also gets turned into that vector. And the way that it works is that when your search gets returned, that the data that is associated with that vector that's closest to it in those numbers will get returned. So for example, when you're searching for a series of conference sessions, and maybe you're looking at one particular topic, one thing you probably see are something like tags. But what if you wanted to actually just search in the search bar and look for that particular topic? So with something like vector search, you could actually end up getting a number of topics versus maybe searching through one particular tag or things like that. It's really cool, but we'll see an example of that in a minute. So, but all that to say for this second point here is that it improves things like vector search, improve accuracy, and reduce the occurrence of things like hallucination. And it's a pretty powerful tool. Another thing with just the AI era is that things that we care about as developers still stand today. Things like scalability, security, cost effectiveness. And a lot of these things are things that we as developers can rely on the cloud for. So things like that actually not quite a unique solution, but something that we need to consider as we're building these applications. So let's talk a little bit more about these generative AI scenarios with Azure Cosmos DB that we're seeing. So like we talked about, creating this idea of vector databases, or working with vector databases to enable this, context in our searches, retrieval augmented generation, also known as RAG, essentially getting a subset of data and providing some context from LM, whether that be data or vectors, to get information and essentially support these new scenarios. Things like chat history. We know that this can be important essentially for enhancing our chat experience with context, and as well as semantic caching. So essentially going back in time and finding those responses to reduce that latency and reduce the cost of computation. So I just want to talk a little bit about one great database. They're all great, but one specific one, Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB vCore. So if you're a MongoDB fan, you'll probably appreciate its familiar syntax. It's integrated into Azure, and all these other points here are great, but look at the bottom point here. It's free. You can actually try this for free yourself, and we'll have some in some of the sample repos that I have today. You'll actually see some information on how to try that out yourself. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, so maybe some of you are maybe familiar with the idea of vendor indexes, or maybe you're even familiar with things like Azure AI Search. So I just kind of want to break down the difference between the two, and as well as talk about some instances where you might see all three at once. So vector indexes, you're normally going to use this for when you have things like operational data, like chat history, like I mentioned, customer data. And for AI search, you're usually going to want to use something like that when you have maybe multiple sets of or multiple types of data. So things like files, so like images, PDFs, and also any like multimodal searches. So things like image analysis and translation. And you want to essentially build maybe some kind of searchable platform for you to be able to use to grab this information from. But there's also instances where you're going to maybe want both. So maybe you want to combine, maybe you want to associate this customer information with a document that they have. Maybe you want to apply things like semantic search, where you could essentially maybe use a recommendation engine for like an e-commerce website. So you could essentially use Azure Cosmos DB for Mongo vCore to store that product information and transaction history, and then you could use use it to like encode those product descriptions and preferences as vectors, and then Azure AI Search can come in and to retrieve the most similar products based on those representations. So this could be images, or maybe other ways to describe that product. And so this is really great because you could provide essentially personalized recommendations based on their past purchases, and also show them new information or new products that are coming in, and help increase their loyalty because they're getting this customized experience. So so those are just a couple of examples that you could essentially use them both. And we'll see some kind of examples where we're kind of doing working with different types of vector databases. But we're going to continue going through this and talk a little bit more about the demos that we're getting ready to move into. And I'm just going to take a quick pause here and see if there's any questions in here. Does the vector DB, I see some questions here. Does the vector DB support standalone search? I'm assuming you're talking about Azure Cosmos DB for vCore. Yes, and you can essentially refer to the documentation on that, but you'd be able to definitely do that. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide here, and then we'll go into some demos. Okay, so what we have here is specifically a basic generative AI app architecture. Specifically, this is that retrieval augmented generation that I was talking about earlier. So normally when you have a customer that's looking for maybe a particular piece of information, so let's say something like a document, maybe a document that they have, or maybe some information about a particular product. Normally, maybe they might interact with some kind of form of some sort. It goes to some data store and finds that particular information. But with things like generative AI, we can actually make this more of a chat experience where you could grab that information, but also have the user ask some specific information about that product or about that document that they might need. So for example, they pull up the document, but maybe they wanted to find something specific, right? So normally when you're looking for something like that in a document, you would download it. Maybe you do Control F in your browser or whatever document reading tool you have. You search through it and you try to find that information. But in situations like this, you could just straight up like use your chat application to read through that document and get the information you need without even having to download it. So looking at this architecture here, on the left side here, we have our data sources. So whether that be from a database for our particular app or file, that data is turned into vectorized, and then and the user on the right will go ahead and ask that question. So of course, this will go through some kind of API or some kind of web service, some kind of interface where the user will interact and essentially use this as if it was like a typical web app or even a mobile app. That search that they put in turns into an embedding. So this is or we request an embedding. So essentially, this is the point in step 2 here on this diagram where that search would be turned into a vector. That vector essentially is and in this particular diagram, we have this Azure function right in there in the middle there that's actually responding to the user to the user's request and essentially quote unquote vectorizing the search, and then those vectors are being compared against Azure Cosmos DB, seeing what's in there, and then returning that response to the user, returning that specific answer to the user. And then of course that information is getting stored, or specifically that history is getting stored so that they can build on their question and have a little bit more context and get down to the answer that they need. Now, one thing I wanted to also just highlight here is that RAG architecture doesn't always necessarily have to involve a embedding or creating vectors. You can actually, RAG architecture just essentially means you're actually applying your data in any form to get some more specific answers about your question with that context of your data. We'll actually see an example of this in a chat app here. So let's move on here and talk a little bit more about Azure for MongoDB vCore integrations. And then we're going to hop right into demos. So recently, Azure Cosmos DB for MongoDB vCore has had a number of really cool integrations from Semantic Kernel, which we'll see, Llama Index, LangChain, as well as Azure OpenAI. And these are all ready for you to use. And this helps you with things like orchestration or working with other services that you want to incorporate into your AI application. So you don't have to rely on just one service, and you don't have to install a bunch of different libraries to use all these things that you want to use. You can essentially rely on the things that you know and love to be able to quickly get started with your AI application. So on that note, let's move on to demos. So the first one we're going to take a look at today is this chat app here. So this is a very basic chat app here hosted on, this demo here is actually using Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. And here I have pretty much a pretty basic hello question here. And I actually can go ahead and create a new chat. Why don't we go ahead and do that? And we'll go ahead and go and hop in our new chat here. And let's go ahead and say, what is the temperature in Brooklyn? And let's actually be specific with what Brooklyn, because there is a Brooklyn in another state. So let's say Brooklyn, NYC. And let's see what it has to say. So it can't tell us that because this is an LLM. We're not actually accessing the web. But let's see if we can find the average temperature. What is the average temperature? And I can also do the shorthand. What's the average temp of in March for Brooklyn, NYC?
It's never great.
Yeah, it's never great.
Like it's so deceptive. And what, it was like 40 degrees earlier. So yeah, this 44 degrees, that seems pretty dead on.
That's pretty accurate. That's kind of funny. We call this time of year. It's not quite spring yet, but we're like about like 3 days away. So we call this season in New York fake spring. So we'll get one day where it's like really really warm. You can see it's actually 7 Celsius right now. So that's pretty close to this 44 F as you can see here. And yeah. So let's see if we can ask another question here. So now it has all this context. Let's see, what can I do? Can I do in Brooklyn with this temp? Just like what activities can I do? Let's see what it gives us. With average temp, there are still plenty of things to do in Brooklyn. You can visit indoor attractions. Yeah, so you can also do outdoor attractions, but be sure to dress warmly. Okay, so yeah, that makes pretty good sense to me. So let's see. Let's maybe just ask one more thing here. What's the highest point in the area? So essentially what I'm asking here is the area that has the highest elevation. The highest. Oh, okay. I didn't know this. This is new information to me, but this area in Greenwood Cemetery is about 200 feet above sea level.
I know exactly where that is. And just to put some context, that is literally a 10-minute walk from where I'm currently sitting. So that's actually really cool. It's a really high hill up there too.
That's so funny. That's awesome. So this particular demo that we walked through here, this we didn't do any RAG, we didn't do anything in addition to essentially creating this what we have here is a Blazor application with Azure Cosmos DB. This is with Azure Cosmos DB NoSQL in the back end, storing that history. And we can actually take a quick look at that if we wanted to. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if I can hop into the portal here. And let's see if we can find, let me just turn my mask on. And let's hop in here and see if we can find our demo here. I believe it is this one here. Let's see.
And while Jasmine's doing that, I want you all to remember, if you've got questions, we would love to hear from you. Go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we will get to them as soon as we can. And we have one right now, Jasmine, if you'd like to answer while you're kind of going through this.
Sure, yeah.
Cool. So Peter would like to know, what should we know about the tokens value?
Mm-hmm. So the tokens essentially is a representation of the characters that you are that you're sending to your LLM, and this is really important for things in Azure or specifically in OpenAI or any LLM service that you're working with. This can kind of dictate things like rate limits and quotas and things like that. So one thing that you might want to just be aware of is how many how large your query or your query or your text that you're sending in is, because that can be essentially expensive or limiting based on the thing that you're trying to do. Now, another thing here is that there's a lot of things that you can essentially say about the token, but essentially it's just a measurement of your characters here. And what I can actually do is send you some additional information in the chat about tokens and how Azure OpenAI manages those tokens specifically. So let me see if I can find, this is not my, let's see, maybe it's this one. Let's see. This is not it. I can't seem to find it. Maybe this one. Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
Live
so
demo
let's.
gods will give and they will take, right?
Yes. This is what I get for having multiple tabs. Let's close this up and let's take a look at our chat container in here. I haven't used this Explorer in so long, but let's see what we got in here. So here I have my session. I'm going to try to close this on the left here. And notice that this was probably my first test that I had here when I deployed this. So let's see what else we have in here. So this is my message, the history of my message. And by the way, I don't know if you all are aware, and I feel like probably in prior user groups, you probably know this, but OpenAI actually uses Azure Cosmos DB to be able to power their ChatGPT application. And so, if somebody was probably working, whomever is working there can probably have a view like this so that you are able to have context in your conversations here. So as you can see, it also even Azure OpenAI actually even has even summarized my message here, or my context here, the context of my conversation. This is the conversation that I was just having. And you can see there's my request here, and you can see how many tokens it actually also uses. So when I come back here, I can see that Azure Cosmos, or excuse me, Azure OpenAI has actually gone ahead and titled my message or my conversation as temperature check. And again, if you've used ChatGPT, you also have this same functionality too, right? Where when you start a conversation and based on its context, it gets summarized in a little contextual button or view here that you can go back and kind of take a look at what the context and have an immediate understanding of what the context of this was. So that was one demo. And again, you can try this out yourself. We'll see some links later. And you can deploy it. It's really quick to deploy. But now I want to try just additional one here. So remember how I was telling you how essentially RAG could essentially you can work with a vector database, or you could work with pretty much a just any data set that you have. Well, in this particular example, we see the same exact demo, except we're now working with a JSON file. So what I'm going to actually do is create a new chat here. Let me probably refresh this and see how we're doing. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead, and we have this Cosmic Works AI Retail Assistant. So let's see how many products are there. Let's see what we get. And we'll see that there's 6 products provided information. Let's show all the products. And let's see what we get here. And we can see that it has nicely organized our products into this list of 6 products here. Let's see how many purchases were made for the Star Strider. Let's see, kind of going rogue here. So okay, so it does not include the number of purchases made for each product, but let's see if we can take a look at the sales order. Show the sales orders. And let's actually swap. Let's see if this works again here. Show the sales orders. Okay, so that's okay. So let's see, show the customers. Let's see what we get. Okay, and like I was telling you before, this is all just JSON here. We can see that all these customers are in here. So let's see how many sales orders were made. Okay, so there's 3 sales orders made. Okay, great. So
I actually have a question, if you don't mind, Jasmine, because I want to get it while we're here in real time. So I see over that there's a number of JSON documents that have come up in that answer before. If you scroll up just a little bit, and I'm curious, can we format that into, I guess, what you would call like human readable as the output? So, maybe in something that's a little bit less JSON and more just straight like text.
Let's see. I'm actually curious. I never tried this. Let's see. Show the customers in by name only, and actually in a more readable format that's not JSON. And
yep, just missing it. There you go.
And then also say this is for a report to non-developers. Let's give it a little bit more context of why we need it so that it understands why. Amazing. Look at this.
Yes, that's exactly what I was hoping for. I feel like that's something that you could easily export to send to somebody for a report, or if they're asking for a quick answer to something. It's really human readable, and I like it. Cool. Yes. So you got a little under 20 minutes to go. So I'm going to give you back the stage. Thanks for answering that question. Really helpful.
Of course, no problem. We're actually on our last demo here. So now we're going to take another example of the RAG pattern. So this particular demo, I'm actually super excited to show you, because this is actually from somebody in a community, John, who has been making a really, really cool number of demos on his GitHub. I'm actually going to share the post that he made at the end of this presentation of step-by-step process on how you can apply RAG in your own application using the same chat interface that we saw in these two demos prior. So earlier in this notebook, and this is just a basic notebook here, we have these helper functions that are just getting our data set up. And in this example, we're using semantic kernel. So like I was mentioning before, semantic kernel allows you to do things like AI orchestration. So essentially using different services within your AI application without having to access a bunch of different libraries. So in this example, John is using semantic kernel to essentially access Azure OpenAI, as well as Azure accessing Azure MongoDB, Azure Cosmos for MongoDB vCore. So in here, we're just doing a couple of just setup here. And so we're going to scroll down, and we're generating some embeddings, creating a little setting up our services here. And we've actually already upserted some data into our Azure Cosmos DB. So memory store. So the embeddings have been generated, and let me show you exactly what we actually created from our embeddings here. So let's see. So this text sample here, as you can see, it's a JSON file, and what we've done and what John has created has essentially taken the title, content, category, vectorized it, turn that into vectors with the Azure Open AI service embedding models. And so essentially you would deploy an embedding model in Azure Open AI service, call that model, and then and use that model to create them. And essentially what you get is a set of numbers that helps with that context and similarity when you're searching. So moving along, let's go ahead, and we've tested vector database. So this query is, what is Azure Database for managed instances? Let's say, what is Azure Cosmos DB? So set my query term here, and here we go. And we can see the relevance score, and we can see how accurate in terms of how close our search got to the vectors in here. Vectors are the vectors that were stored in Azure Cosmos DB, and we can see that it returned actually one thing here, and it says that that it essentially just pretty much what I told you about Azure Cosmos DB. Now, notice that in this Python code, we have, result 0. So essentially what we're returning is the first or the closest, I believe the closest results from our search. Now, if I probably put one or more in here, I could probably find out what else is in here. I'm actually curious myself. We have like probably 15 more minutes. So I'm just gonna just print and see what we get from this result here. And let's see. So I'd have to go ahead and go into this object here. So without having to type a little bit more here, I would highly encourage you to try out this demo yourself. It was actually took me about 5 minutes to set up on my own machine here or specifically on CodeSpaces, but it was really quick to set up. So there's probably more here in this result here. Let me just try and put one in here, maybe see if we got anything else in there. Okay, so that was the only thing in there, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and continue on and just continue on down here. So here we're giving we're working with our chat completion model here, and we're telling the LLM that they're a chatbot, and to have conversations about any topic related to the provided content, which is that JSON file we saw. And again, if it doesn't have a good answer, it just says I don't know. So we're gonna go ahead and add that in here. And we already went ahead and did this. So let's go ahead and move on down, and let's just come down to our completion. So completion result is down here. Let's see if I go ahead and let me go ahead and run these other cells here, because we did change our query here. Let's see what I broke in here. So this is already done. So that's okay. That is an error we can ignore. So let's go ahead and move on. And it looks like our completion result is different. Let's see if I can find where in this demo where we are making that query term here. It looks like it's in here, but I'm not going to mess with it too much, because I know in the interest of time. So let's go ahead and look at the output of this final cell here. So here we're having a full conversation. So let me go ahead and see if I can run this. And you can see up in the top here, I can actually query and ask some questions here. So we're just going to follow what John had initially had in the cell and type hello. And so now it's asking, okay, how can I assist you today with Azure Service Bus? What can you tell me about Azure database offerings? And let's see. So it tells us Azure SQL database, and see what else it has in here. And also it tells us some other offerings in here as well. That's great. So let's press escape to cancel here. And that's a really, really neat way for you to kind of understand how to apply RAG and how to work with vector databases. So I didn't have to really, all I really had to do here is just set up the Azure MongoDB vCore, Azure Cosmos MongoDB vCore database and a collection, and then this notebook takes care of the rest. Now I'm going to move on to one additional thing before we swap back to the slides. This particular demo that I just showed you, that is it broken down into its nuts and bolts on a notebook. But John has actually built a chat application that does the same exact thing and actually gives you a walkthrough tutorial on how to do that. So it's pretty much a step-by-step process on how to do that. So I highly recommend you check that out. And I'm going to come back to the slides here and show you some short links here, and then I will be all set. So let me just show you the short links that I have here. And again, thank you all so much for coming and check out this session with me. I hope you enjoyed the demos. Again, you can try these out yourself. The first one here, the first chat application demo was the first one I showed. There's also the other one with the products in there as well. The second one is building your own RAG application. That first short link there is the tutorial, the blog tutorial, but it also does lead you to the GitHub repository. And also while you're there, check out the author John's other demos there. If you are a big Cosmos DB fan, or are you a fan of the Azure data platform, he has a bunch of really cool demos out there. So just really great, amazing MVP content out there surrounding Azure Cosmos DB. And the next one is a more involved RAG application where you can essentially, again, deploy that to Azure, try it out yourself, take it apart, take a look at the code. I believe it's built in .NET, but also another option for you to explore as well. So thank you all so much. And I'm excited to hear what you all build. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or on LinkedIn and let me know what you're building.
Very, very cool, Jasmine. That was a great demo or series of demos. And I learned a bunch. If you've got any questions left over, please put them in the chat. But if you don't, well, know that there are so many links that you can go and check out. I put everything in the description for today's video. And this video will be available to you as soon as we finish. You'll be able to go back, watch the beginning, the middle, the end, you name it. We'll be able to see everything. You're already on the YouTube video if you're watching it that way. So just refresh it and you'll see everything's on demand ready for you. Jasmine, I think we should bring back in Askia. What do you think?
Sure.
So we had a great session, as we always do, but I think there's a little bit of closing housekeeping you need to do.
Yeah, I want to thank both you, Jay and Jasmine, for an excellent session. Very informative. But we always appreciate feedback. So we've shared our link in the chat, and it is here as well. So basically, if you take a moment, fill out that feedback, use that event ID code, which is 21979. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Once again, thank you both, and thank everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
And Askia, I think we got another one coming next month with John. John, who we've talked with or talked about today. We're going to learn more from John. He's going to be working together with one of our great people, Kilan Modi. They are going to work and talk a little bit more about vCore. I know they're both working together to put together something really cool for you. John, we can't wait to see what you've got. Thank you for being in our chat today. And thank you all for being in our chat today. We learned a ton. And Jasmine, what's the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on X. My handle is Paladique, Paladique. It's right there. So say hello.
And you can find all that in actually as well the YouTube description. You can find all of Jasmine's information. But that being said, you know what time it is? It's the part of the show that I love. Little background music to get us closed out. Hey, everybody. Like we said before, we try to do this at least once a month. We try to have it the second or third week of the month. And your participation is just key to make this happen. While we are always welcome to have our Microsoft friends take part in this, we really want to hear from you, the community, as well. And so just like John, who's come to us and has a really great session and will be sharing with us next month, we want you to do the very, very same. So you can go into the YouTube comments, or I should say the description, and you can find our intake form, or you can see it right there below us. I think I put it in the chat as well. Please submit a session. We want you to be part of this show. We want you to share what you've learned and just let the community know that you're part of this, you're building, you're doing really cool things. It's all we want to know. But I think we're done building cool things for today. Jasmine, thank you so much. Askia, thank you so much. We've got always great shows, and we can't wait for the next one. So until then, we will see you next month. Take care, everybody. Let's give them all the big wave goodbye.
Bye.
Till then, everybody, see you soon. We appreciate you being part, and we'll see you next time.